So I would like to welcome everybody here to this week's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion workshop. I am here with a couple of hats on. I'm Becky Bates. I am the past chair of the Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and really happy that in the last few years our professional development offerings have grown to the point that we are doing this weekly summer series. I would like to thank Megan and Bree for hosting this and organizing all of the seminar series, workshops, and webinars. So just a little bit about the commission. This is a board-appointed commission that draws people from all of the divisions in the American Society for Engineering Education, both as delegates and friends, to support the work of increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just in the society, but also in engineering education. So if you would like to become a part of this, I invite you to join. There is a link there. And we are having our business meeting this Saturday. So if you're interested in that, we will get you information about how to sign up and register for the business meeting. You do not have to be attending the conference this year to be able to be part of our business meeting or to be part of the work of the commission. So the second hat that I'm wearing here is as one of the engineering editors for the Online Ethics Center. And the goal of today and this workshop is to think about, with the Online Ethics Center, how can we expand the resources that are available to our community that really connect issues of diversity, equity, access, and inclusion when we think about ethics education for engineers. So my partners today are Dr. Rosalind Byrne, who is the director of the center, and Michael Louie, who is on the advisory board of the center. And this is a community of people, representatives of a community of people that really care about ethics education in engineering, but are also really concerned about how this connects to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to be doing a quick introduction to our workshop series, which is happening all summer long, except for next week when the conference is happening. And to find out the information about the rest of the summer series or to register for any individual webinar, please go to the bit.ly link that's here. It's also pretty easy to find on our web pages. So right now what we're doing is a workshop and not just a webinar. So I'd like to give a little bit of introduction about the platform we're working on. So everybody should have audio capacity. Hopefully you have webcams. You can give us feedback and each other feedback by using some of the reactions that are in the control panel. These are probably either towards the bottom or the top of your sheet. And oh my goodness, I totally forgot to turn on closed captioning. Thank you for that reminder. And I think I need to stop sharing real quick because it stopped giving me the option. So I have turned on closed captioning. And so now, thank you. When we think about access for any kind of education, it's really important to use all of the technical tools we have. So the closed captioning is available through Google Slides. And mostly what's going to happen is when I'm showing slides, it will work. If you're somebody that needs more information, please let us know so we can have somebody typing in the gaps. Also notice that punctuation is lacking. So as engineers, as we think about things like automatic speech recognition and supportive technology, you might notice that there are things that make this not fully accessible. This is an engineering challenge. Okay, so just a couple of other things about giving feedback. On your panel, especially if you go into participants, you can do things like change your name, provide pronoun information there. You can also give thumbs up or applause or thumbs down. You can raise your hand if you have questions, and you can also do chat. Okay, so again, as I said, this is a workshop. We are going to ask you to participate, and we hope you will. As you do this, there's some tips that we have. Because we're asking people to interact, it's really valuable if we can see your face and see your interactions. So if you have a camera, please do turn it on and please use it. We do know though that internet access is uneven across our country and internationally. I know sometimes we have international participants. Bandwidth might be an issue. So if I could say that there's one time to use your camera, it'll be in the breakout session when you're actually working with people. It's also helpful to use a headset with microphone that reduces some of the extra noise that might come in. It also can make it easier for you to hear. If you're not speaking, I'm going to ask you to mute yourself to avoid extra feedback, or to mostly to avoid extra feedback, but also because you might have unexpected noises. When I'm not speaking, I'm going to be muting myself because there's construction going on across the street from my house. We also encourage you to actively use the chat box. So if somebody says something or types something that you really agree with, you can use +1 to indicate that you agree with that. So you can ensure that your name shows properly. Sometimes at my institution, sometimes people get their login codes, which is letters and numbers, and doesn't really give information about who you are. So if you go to your picture, there should be a little blue box with 3 dots. If you click on that, it gives you the option to rename yourself. So you can, if you have a preferred name, please put it in there. Again, I encourage you to add your pronouns and to make that available for people to see. So if you have technical issues, you can reset the audio, you can log off, or you can reboot your computer. We are recording this, so you should, so if you miss something, you should be able to come back and get it. Okay, so then for the breakout sessions, we are going to be sending you into smaller breakout groups. Make sure your camera is on and that your audio is connected. We will also be asking you to work in the slides that we gave to you. So I'll be updating the link in the chat box. These slides are publicly available, and we're going to ask you to use them as a workspace. In your small groups, where it depends on how many people are here, but we're going to be working with about groups of 4 to 5 to do this work. Thank you, Megan, for that link. And then we'll send chat messages that will show up in your small groups to help keep you on task. So as a member of this community, I'm going to ask you to stay engaged, to participate, to both listen and speak. If something's not clear, ask for clarity. These are not always easy issues to deal with, and sometimes personal experiences come out. Please speak your truth, and please hear people when they are speaking their truth. If you are uncomfortable, notice that and reflect on it, and expect that with all of these issues, there might not be closure by the end of it. The goal is to work towards that and to work through our discomfort, even knowing that, in my experience, especially in the last month, I'll get to a place where I start to feel comfortable again, and then I'll become uncomfortable as I learn more. So this putting ourselves on the edge of learning is often uncomfortable. So I am going to now pass this over the speaking role to Rosalind Byrne and let her talk about the Online Ethics Center and her experience right now trying to find resources for her class.
Okay, thank you, Becky, and hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. And I'll just start with a brief overview that the ethics.
We should ask for the check-in poll. I forgot to do that.
Check-in poll?
Yep.
All right.
So
right, the poll is launched.
Great. Looks like we're about over half professors, some administrators, some students, and some people that aren't in those 3 major roles.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yep.
All right, and all from engineering education, I'm going to assume.
Probably a close assumption.
Right, okay. So,
We see that secondary ed is not on here, and thank you, Ruth, for letting us know that that's an area.
Yes, thank you.
hmm.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. All right, thank you, everyone.
So I'm going to just spend about 7 to 9, 10 minutes at most talking about the OEC, my experience with it, etc., before we ask you to be engaged directly. So the OEC is a project of the National Academy of Engineering, and it's funded by the National Science Foundation. The project is in collaboration with co-PIs from Illinois Institute of Technology and Arizona State University. So with the IIT relationship, we have direct access to the ethics library there, the IIT Ethics Library, and that functions to index all the resources on the Online Ethics Center. So anyone who comes to the OEC Online Ethics Center, we're going to call it the OEC, can then have access to the resources on the IIT. So this is essentially about providing resources for ethics education in engineering and science, both. I come from an engineering school. That has been my own orientation. So the OEC provides STEM ethics education resources in general and is attempting to connect practitioners and researchers, students, educators to promote learning and advance understanding of ethical practice in engineering and science. So the funding has come from NSF for a few different projects. The current and most recent project is called Transforming Ethics Education, connecting STEM faculty, research administrators, and the ethics education resources through Online Ethics Center. I came to the NSF and to this project from the University of Virginia School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, where I've been on faculty there for 20 years, mostly teaching courses on engineering ethics. When I came to the NSF, I was aware of the OEC. I knew about it. I knew the person who created and founded it, a woman named Carolyn Whitback. But I didn't use it very often. And I wasn't sure why that was, but I didn't. Now that I've been assigned PI to this project for the last 2 years, I've been getting more deeply engaged and excited and interested in the vast resources that are there. And I had become pretty clear that when I go back to teaching at UVA, I'm going to use the OEC to help build my syllabus and bring students to those resources. Indeed, I am going back. After this summer, I'll be back full-time at UVA. And so I've been thinking already, of course, about the courses for the fall. And our department chair, in reaction to everything that's going on right now around questions of race in this country, asked if somebody from the department would be willing to do a course on race at the intersection of science and technology. I offered and thought, I know just what to do. I'm going to go to the OEC and build from the resources there. So what happened is that I went to the OEC and I did what we have searches that are there. And as you can see, we have all kinds of resources, and those include cases and syllabi that could be used for instructional purposes, and collections around topics, all kinds of essays and projects. Currently, we are in the midst of a series of webinars on teaching ethics, and that actually we just ended in the spring. We're now launching a new series of panels around ethical responses to COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. So there are recordings of webinars, all kinds of things that can be used for students to learn and for faculty to teach ethics. So I thought, okay, great. I'm thinking about this course. This is where I'm going. So I did a search. And as you can see from this screen, all you have to do is type in your search terms and let it rip, see what happens. And I did a search. You notice the search that says diversity case study brings up biodiversity. Huh, odd, I thought. So it turns out that perhaps something's missing from the OEC. And one of the things we're hoping that you'll help us to do is think about that. At any rate, before moving on a little further through these screens, I want to say that the OEC as a resource really does belong to all of us in STEM education, students and faculty, and that's from the secondary level through graduate. There are resources there for research integrity. There are resources there for engineering practice. It belongs to all of us. With the coming online of the forums that we now have, where students and faculty can go and share ideas and thoughts and exchange their experiences around ethics education, even more so, it belongs to all of us. It belongs to all of us in that faculty from anywhere can submit resources that will be peer-reviewed by our editorial board and published on the OEC. So what's there is what we create. It's what we create together. And what's there now is what has been created by communities of practitioners, faculty before us. The question for us today is, does the OEC genuinely and richly represent the larger community of engineering education? When people join the OEC, it's really just a matter of getting their name and some minor bioinformation into the source so that they can receive newsletters, they could be part of the forum. But who is the community currently? And is it the community that we really need to support one another in the kind of engineering education we want to do around ethics at this point? So that's sort of a general overview. And based on my experience, I think that we have work to do. And we're going to turn to you both to offer support, but also to ask you to help us do that work.
So there are a lot of different things that we could add to the Online Ethics Center. There's certainly more resources, but one of the things we'd like to add are more authors. And because this is a peer-reviewed publication as an online resource, and because it's formally published by the National Academies, this could potentially be a prestigious publication on somebody's CV. We want to make sure that this is known and available to people. So thinking about what kinds of resources you could need, what kinds of resources you could potentially offer. Some of that could be commentary on current cases or new cases, additional methods and materials. As we think about pedagogical approaches that could be used to embed ethics education in engineering classes, experts on different forms of pedagogy that provide a different ethical experience for students might be something that could be added. So we're going to move into the breakout session. What I'd like to do is make sure that everybody has this onlineethics.org as a starting point. So I am going to type it into the chat window. We'd like you to go there and search. Think about what would you like to bring into a course of yours. So it could be, you might be somebody that has a focus class on engineering ethics. It could be that you're teaching fluid mechanics and want to think about, are there cases that relate to the technical content my students are learning that lets them think about ethics education in this space? So think about what search terms you might want to use and try to find it. As you look for it, you might find exactly what you want, but you might also find that something is missing. So as you're exploring and finding things that are missing, this warm-up will let you let you answer the first task of your breakout groups. So you can do a little bit of time searching on your own and then connect to that with your group. If you're not sure what to search for, you might get hints from the other people in your group. We're going to ask you to take notes on that experience in the first breakout slides. So there'll be one per group that we have set up. And then we'd like you to collectively address the question of what could be added, and then think about who could be encouraged to add it. We know that sometimes an invitation might be all it takes. So we are inviting you, but we also want you to think about, is there somebody that has a story or an experience or knowledge that could improve this resource, this community resource? So in the slides, so there's a link to the Ethics Resources webpage. On that webpage is a link to these slides. They are editable by everybody, so you can all dive in and work on it. So to answer the first question, you'll see slides like this. Go to the slide for your breakout group number, and then there's a collective strategy. So please contribute to the note taking about what strategy could we take here? Who should we invite? What should be added? What are the actions? And then if these are actions you are willing to participate in, then you can take an accountability pledge. Put in your name and your email address. If this is something you want to work with, then you can put your name here. So at this point, I think we are ready to go into breakout rooms. Yep.
Sorry, Ruth Akers is saying there's not an option for secondary ed. What's the best way to integrate her and others?
Oh, this was in the poll. So what we know is that we need to update the poll for future webinars.
But it doesn't affect what they're going to do in breakout groups.
No, and
Right.
I think that's going to be a really interesting perspective as we think about how these resources might be available and useful to K-12 educators and learners.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad she's here. So I think
So I've got breakout rooms queued. So there'll be 5 to 6 people per room. And so there's a question in the chat about how do you know your number? It'll be clear. It'll say you're in group whatever number, and then that will help you get to the right slide. All right, Becky, are you ready for us to break out?
We're ready to go, and we'll send you cues. They'll show up at the top of the window as you're working together. All right, so I'm going to welcome people back and thank you for the work. It's been really impressive seeing the slides get information added to them. What we're going to do now is ask groups to report back on their strategies. I'm going to encourage people, especially if you hear something that resonates with you, that was a strategy from a different group, but not necessarily yours, feel free to go back in and put your name under that accountability space. Is this something you would like to work on? Is this an idea that connects with you? All right, so I could do things in order of the numbers, or I could ask for a volunteer and tell us which group they're in.
I think doing them in order would be the easiest way for us to all keep up.
Okay, all right, so Brian and Sarah, do you want to report back from group 1?
Hey, it didn't have my last thing on there. Anyway, I'm in engineering administration and in the dean's office, so do mostly recruiting and advising and student success. And my colleague is in biomedical engineering research. And we found that there really wasn't a whole lot there for us to find in our given areas. So I think it's just going to take more time to get people to use it, people to contribute to it, marketing it in some ways, and then trying to connect with other repositories of ethics information, like what ASEE regularly does. key actions, I think, really is don't let it just sit on the people who are the engineering ethics, quote unquote, experts. We all have a role in this, just like the other actions we're taking with Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ rights and so forth. It's all of our responsibility to try to drive that. And so that's, the more we can all contribute to it, the better off it's going to be. Of course, that takes both time to do it and time to build that up, but that's what we've really been able to come up to. I think I added that under key actions with about 4 seconds to go. So.
All right, so thank you, Brian. Thank you, Group 1. I can escape this and reshare so that if groups so that if you entered something or are still entering something, it'll show up. But if I start presenting before you've entered something, it won't show up. I will say that we're going to try to officially close this on the hour, but we're happy to stay and continue conversations about this afterwards. So Group 2, I see you didn't actually get to the strategy slide, but in your conversations, did you have something that would that you think should be an action item? And I'm not sure, I knew who was in Group 1, but I'm not sure who was in Group 2.
I was in Group 2 and I can talk. We found the note slide. We did not follow, we didn't find the breakout group. There we go. So we talked about searching and how using the tags and fields, at least with a smaller number, was easier for us to navigate. We also had some that we didn't see. I think that was on Group 1 slide, like LGBTQ, case study relevant to data science. So that was those were our fields. We had questions about how you handle copyright with university. I think there was a strategy slide that talked about who to target as publishing. So we said, industry, patient advocates, so the people being impacted by the research, and people doing research. I think that's a general overview of what we talked about.
Great, thank you. Group 3.
Well, I was elected to start, but I'll turn it over to our group members as well. We had a great group, Jenna, Melissa, Jennifer, Ruth, and myself. We also didn't see a second slide, but we put as many notes as we could on this slide.
Great.
With our diverse backgrounds, we were looking for a lot of content. Everything from big data analytics and bias in AI and machine learning. There was nothing on that front. Ethics of big data, found a syllabus on ethics of big data in the life sciences, which was really helpful. Nothing on diversity in big data and analytics, bias in algorithms, nothing. Some folks were also interested in teaching new courses on engineering science, and so they were looking for resources that would help them set up a new course. There was a conversation about, do we have just ethics in individual courses, or do we have a whole course on ethics? And people were so excited about all the content that was available, they felt confident that they could come up with new courses, which is really exciting. So things like ethical decision-making in diverse populations and so forth. So on the right-hand side, we tried to put more information about what we did find. So it's kind of mixed in both in question 1 and question 2, what we did find. And we also tried to highlight what we didn't find. And so, I was really surprised that there was nothing that I could find on either diversity or bias in artificial intelligence or machine learning, given how important that is and how many interesting articles have been written about it recently. So that's not there. So then we had a conversation about, so what could be added. So people had a couple of good suggestions about things that might be there. So I mentioned there's a real good article recently, I think it was in Science, on AI and machine learning. And I don't know if we could link to that or, have some kind of partnership or something. But then the question of who should do it. And so we had a discussion about this is a community and this kind of public goods problem that if people know of some good resource, if you have built a community, they can then contribute if they know that it would be valued by other people. Team, is there anything else you want to add, guys?
I think you did a great job of summarizing.
Thank you, Ruth.
we also mentioned that while we did find some things, that some things were a little bit out of date or didn't have everything that could possibly you'd want, you know, now instead of like 5 or 10 years ago when it was first added. And if there's some way that you could add like an addendum or a link to a newer resource or a newer piece of information that could be connected to some of these older sources that are still very relevant and very good, that would be something that we could probably look into doing.
Yeah, I think that's great, having augmenting the resources that are there. That's basically like being the author of a second edition of a textbook. It's still authorship. Great. Okay, breakout group 4.
Okay, I'll go, I guess.
Thank you, Emily.
So we found that we had a few common kind of key search terms at first. Like we were looking for things where it wasn't just the common explosions and disastrous, you know, I-35, the Challenger. Like what can we use for ethics examples beyond that? So things like unintended consequences, unintentional consequences, machine learning infrastructure, stuff like that. And what we ended up finding was that, well, first of all, there could be more of those. And so a lot of our strategy in strategy 4 is like things that we could have more of. But a lot of it also had to do with just like the key search terms seemed to not quite be what we wanted. Like we would maybe find something about medical devices, but not if we typed in medical devices. Instead of, you know, we'd find something about dialysis if we typed in like sustainability or something, but not in medical devices. So we could eventually find what we were looking for, but not using the keywords we thought would yield what we wanted. And so in addition to just like, let's keep adding to this resource, we were wondering if there would be a way to redo how key terms work here. Because there is stuff there that we couldn't find with the most obvious terms to us. Anyone else from group 4 want to add to that?
All right, thank you. Group 5.
I can talk a little bit about this. So we had sort of the same issue. I think that the search engine was a little difficult to use in terms of, so I just started typing like biomedical, medical, bio, had no hits, and then I can't remember how I ended up getting a hit of that same article that was presented in the presentation. So improving the search case. So if I just typed in engineering, I got a few case studies, but if I were trying to be a little bit more specific, I couldn't get case studies. One thing that we did discuss quite a bit is how do we discuss ethical issues with students without offending some of them, and that would be nice. So examples of having a discussion with students as opposed to just teaching them something. What we're trying to do in the college, at least in electrical and computer engineering, is infuse specific courses with ethics labs or exercises so that there are continuous touch points throughout their entire time with us. So we do it in Introduction to Engineering. There's a second year course, I think it's in Signals and Systems, not for any specific reason, and then obviously in Capstone, and we're looking for a third year course. So if there's, you know, so processes would be nice. Like how would you do that versus a course? And then how do we prepare them for the difficult situations? Because it's not, there is the tendency to believe that if you make an ethical decision, that you will be better afterwards. But in fact, making ethical decisions very often leads to bad consequences for you personally. And so I think students need to know that up front, because they need to, that's how you strengthen your resolve to do the correct thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's one. I think I added, and one thing that I was thinking about while everybody was talking is academia has blind spots. Academia has blind spots in terms of how we train professors to not necessarily be ethical, but how to treat students in their classrooms, which I think is an ethics issue. You know, there are a lot of things, you know, how we treat each other, how we promote each other. I don't know if that's strictly in the area of ethics, but if we don't look at ourselves and look at how we conduct our lives and our professional lives, then we are not very convincing when we try to teach other people how to make ethical decisions.
Thank you. I'm going to agree that the how of teaching and learning can definitely be an ethical decision for faculty members.
Well, yeah, but also how we conduct. I mean, students observe us. They're observing us continuously, and so since they are observing us, then they have to observe us being continuously ethical. We can't turn it on and off for the classroom.
I agree, but then modeling that behavior and how to do that, and how to include it in a classroom specifically, but potentially extending to office hours and research practices. I think those are things that could certainly be added here.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, group 6, we'll have you do a quick report out and then talk about how we can use some of these resources and how people can contribute.
So we didn't decide who was going to speak, but so I'll just jump in the interest of time. Most of what we talked about has been discussed here in terms of using the search box. Didn't seem to turn up a lot, or was unexpected. So we had a chemical engineering faculty member, and searching chemical engineering in the search box only turned up 2, going with everything displayed, going through the filters, there were 16. So it's hard to figure out, I guess, what is there. And so one of the strategies that came up was possibly finding people, some community members, to build a map of more what's there and what's missing. So if, you know, is there even distribution across the disciplines, or are there gaps places? Because some of them have a lot more than others, and then figuring out ways to get that in. And then I've already mentioned this to you, but I would really like to have a way to bookmark things when I find them so that I can find them again.
Okay, thank you all for this work and for considering this. And I think these are things that I know the editorial board is actually meeting this week. They will get a report. And this is also something that we hope people will contribute to. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you for a couple minutes. I know some people have their meetings that they have to go to, so the slides are available, and we'll stick around after the official closing.
Thank you. The standard categories of material for the OEC are instructional materials such as assessment tools, case studies and scenarios, educational activities, and instructional materials such as syllabuses and lesson plans. The OEC already has many classic engineering ethics cases and scenarios. As Jennifer Cole said, we could use more recent cases as well. And some of the scenarios are very decontextualized. When we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we really need to think about the context so we can understand all the stakeholders as well. Scholarly materials include essays, bibliographies, commentaries on existing resources, and links to these in publications. and then other materials such as events, presentations, and multimedia and videos. Next slide, Becky. So how you can submit, it's very simple online. You can jot down this URL or go find how to submit on the website. As a contributor, you need to provide a title, abstract, and either the URL to point to someplace on the web or a document in a common format such as a PDF, keywords, and copyright information. If you're the copyright holder, you can choose one of the standard Creative Commons licenses, which are pretty common for shared resource these days. Your contribution is then screened by the OAE staff and peer reviewed by the editorial board. And so let me emphasize, these are peer reviewed, but it's much less onerous than peer reviewed manuscripts for journals. The criteria are pretty straightforward. Is the resource well written? Is the material relevant? Are the facts accurate? And does the resource add significantly to the collection? Having submitted several items to the OEC, I can attest that the process really is straightforward. I've gotten colleagues to contribute. So if you or someone you know could contribute something, please put your name in the accountability pledge table and we'll harvest those and bother you afterwards. Okay, so thank you, and now we can conclude.
All right, just to give you all a little more information, the Online Ethics Center, Rosalind mentioned that there's some webinars coming up looking at ethics in the time of COVID. And so if you're interested in those, you can find links to them on the website. So there's a webinar this Friday and then also next Wednesday and Friday. And I encourage you to think about those. We really thank you for your participation today and your engagement in this process. And if you have any other questions or want to talk more about this, we're really happy to stick around. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
I love that we wave to each other at the end of Zoom meetings.
I do have a question, and I do need to go after I ask my question.
Okay.
But if one of you could say that, I've been attending all of these sessions throughout summer, all of these workshops.
Great.
And is there a central location where all the resources for every session is contained so that I can just go to one website later on and access everything?
Why, yes.
Yes, there is. So on the CDEI website, actually after every session, you should be receiving an email from me. I'm Megan Pollock, and all of the resources that we have available, all the recordings are going right back on the exact same page that you registered from. And so you can access that from the resource page on our website.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put that link in the chat just for easy direction.
Okay, thank you.
Becky, could you expand a little? You mentioned in the chat using fiction. So could you just talk a little bit more about how you're doing that?
How many hours would you like me to talk about this? I can point you to a webinar I actually did earlier this semester for the Online Ethics Center webinar series. So that's available. There's actually quite a few groups that are using fiction. I'm teaching my favorite class right now. It's artificial intelligence and science fiction. And so this whole summer, we've been watching movies and reading novels and short stories and really grappling with some of the ethical issues that we see. And what I find is that students are really engaged in this. So most of the students in my class are also students in my engineering programs. And so they're invested in the technical materials. In my project-based engineering program, Twin Cities Engineering, we do a common read every semester, and about every 5 semesters, we do some work of fiction. So the most recent one was it was a William Gibson one. I kind of hated it, so I'm happily blocking it out. But we get to talk about misogyny, we get to, so things that are coming up in society become part of a conversation because we're talking first about a story and then about student experiences. And one of the benefits of science fiction is that you can look at issues with how humans relate to humans first from a how humans relate to robots perspective, and think about ethical issues connected to that, and then think about differences. So in this class, I started off having people watch Star Wars and have them watch Star Wars through the screen of the droids. Think about the androids, think about the droids, and think about the design, form versus function. What are they being designed to do? How are they expected to interact? But once you start watching that, you notice that the androids are really treated as, and the droids are treated as second-class citizens. They're not allowed in my bar. And so these interactions let us also think about how do we treat people? But first from this kind of non-defensive space of, well, we're not talking about people that are different from me, we're talking about droids in Star Wars. So I use it in a lot of different ways. There's my favorite short story right now is Cat Pictures, Please by Naomi Kritzer. And this is a story of an AI who wants more cat pictures. If people would just put more cat pictures on the internet, then the AI would get everything the AI wants. And so then the AI has to think about, what can I do to get more people to put cat pictures on the internet? And tries to, and analyzes all these different moral codes, and starts with reciprocity and the golden rule, and starts making more cat pictures more easily available and accessible to people. Like, here, I'll give you cat pictures. No, please give me more. And sees that that doesn't really work, and steps through different ways of trying to help people. So it's kind of a fun exploration of ethical spaces by an AI. So yeah, so I really could talk for a long time about this, but there's papers in the ASCE conference proceedings. We do in the SIGSE community, the computer science education community, we've been doing a common read for the last like 5 years. We started off just doing fiction. We've added in a nonfiction book. And this idea of how do we, well, we've been trying to encourage faculty to think about things that draw people into the community of learners. And sometimes that's just knowing that, you know, in computer science, a lot of people understand the meaning of 42. And so maybe to have like a good conversation with at a dinner table at a conference, maybe you should have read some books that many people have also read.
In my house, it would be helpful if you had memorized the entire Douglas Adams canon, because my husband is definitely disappointed that I don't get all of his references.
Right. Right. And for some people, it's Monty Python.
Also true at our house, but I get a lot more of those. I have noticed that thinking about fiction and popular culture, some jokes in stories don't hold over time. So there are certain jokes that I had to throw away because my students didn't get them. Anything related to Star Trek does not fall, they're just blank. But Monty Python, I mean, you can use Monty Python forever, as far as I've been able to tell.
You know, I tried to use it this year. My husband was having his 70th birthday, and he's a Monty Python addict. He really loves it. And I wanted to put a caption on the first slide, "I'm not dead yet." And then I thought, oh wait, this is not good, because that scene was a pandemic scene. That was right. A really bad scene for now. So I didn't end up making reference to it at all. Other than that, I agree with you entirely. You know, they would bring out your dead, and they're throwing dead people on the cards. It's like, oh my God, this is just not appropriate right now.
I don't know, maybe if more people would watch it, they would start to realize that that's where we're going to end up. But
well, there's that.
That might be a topic for another time. I don't
another time.
Becky's webinar.
I'm trying to figure out how to work in Kindred this year. Octavia Butler's novel Kindred, because that's really around power relationships and how easy it is to assume a sense of entitlement and power given the situation you're put in. That's a really difficult book, and I don't know how to quite work it in to engineering education, but the point is awfully well made. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that particular piece of science fiction. The premise is that this interracial couple living in San Diego, the woman, who's a Black woman, puts her arm through a wall and ends up falling through and back in time and ending up on a plantation. And her white husband is trying to find her and very upset and misses her and finally falls through too. Long story short, he is empowered in ways that he'd never experienced before and starts to absorb that power, and it changes the dynamics of their relationship. It's a sobering book, and being in an interracial marriage myself, I have to tell my husband, now you just make sure that you don't lose yourself. So it's not specifically about engineering, but Becky was talking about, like, even the droids of Star Trek can be reinterpreted as human-human relationship. Anyway, you all told us some things today I was not prepared to hear, but I'm really glad I've heard. We have a lot of work to do. And I hope you'll stay engaged with the OEC.
Thanks,
Rosalind.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rosalind. Yes, indeed. I appreciate having that as a resource to go to, even when I get frustrated when I'm trying to find things there.
Well, that's helpful. I feel the same way. I have the same feelings. All right.
I know, I mean, I found something that was really interesting, and it sent me to a Georgia Tech website, and then their links off of their page are broken.
Oh no.
This curation thing is a nightmare in and of itself. And it's I appreciate having it there.
If you ever find a dead link that's direct to the site, please let us know. We can yank that really quickly.
But also, I think we should have, we might want to be archiving things we link to, because the preference would be to send people to the original link. But if those links die, we should be able to send them to, to a copy acknowledging where they came from.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that our space doesn't.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I ran into that with a lot. So there's a lot of stuff linked to the Texas A&M Ethics Center. And I guess Texas A&M rebuilt their server structure and their addressing. And so not in the things that I looked for today, so I can't tell you exactly what they were, but some other time when I was ferreting around, I ran into a lot of those.
We can go look for those. We can go look for those.
And so what I wound up doing most of the time was just then doing a search at the Texas A&M website. But and sometimes I found the things and sometimes I didn't.
All right, we'll take a look at that.
But you have so many objects that finding all of the bad links is a chore.
Someone said something about mapping. That would be a brilliant project for a summer intern or something like that. Yeah.
Actually, that came out of Breakout Group 6. That came out of the group I was in.
Well done. Thank you.
and also figuring out keywords.
Yeah, well.
And I think that that's something too, that these are things that we can ask students to do as class assignments. To go and read things and see what feels incomplete, what couldn't you find? Like, here's a list of the case studies. Would these keywords get you there, or should we add other keywords? And I think that kind of thing, and it might not be an engineering class that does this. Maybe it's an information, like a library information science class that does this, or a communications class.
Yeah, that, and I mean, having you can make comments.
Thanks, Brian.
I've never done anything in comments, but
That's new. Our forum on teaching ethics is brand new, and it's in a soft, it's in a beta test right now, I think. And so you won't be able to make comments quite yet, but soon.
okay, because I just sort of say I didn't think I saw any place, but having a really quick, like, this should have this keyword, like a really quick first feedback thing of the link on this page is broken, where it pre-populates the page you're on, or you know, this is something I was looking for using this keyword and it didn't show up.
Yeah.
So like like the multiple choice troubleshooting or problem thing when you try to go to somebody's tech support and they want you to pick a problem out of a list. I don't know if that could help if that could help manage it or not, but.
Yeah. Great.
Anyway, thank you everyone. Megan, Bree, Michael,
Thanks
Becky.
for coming, Susan. So Roz, you can give lots of points to Beth there.
Yeah, I'm going to take the recording and share it with the
Yes.
project team and the editorial board. Yeah.
Right.
Good.